All right, we'll go ahead and get started. Welcome, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Hannah Fox, and I'm the Client Experience Manager at Giveffect. For those of you who might not be as familiar, Giveffect is an all-in-one nonprofit platform that brings together the tools that organizations need to operate efficiently, including donor management, volunteer management, CRM, marketing, all the things more. Um, Today, and really just all the tools that help your nonprofit operate smoothly, achieve operational efficiency, financial stability, and further your mission. And today, I'm so excited to welcome our speaker, Mike Marcus, Community Engagement and Insights Manager at Reconciliation Services. Before we dive into today's session, I just want to go over a couple of housekeeping items. Today's session format is a quick 30-minute session broke up by 20 minutes of learning, followed by 10 minutes of audience Q&A. So please be sure to share your questions throughout the session using the Q&A icon at the bottom of your screen. We're also going to give coffee to three of you joining us today. To enter, simply follow us on LinkedIn. You'll find the link in the chat. Like one of our May posts and share a key takeaway, something you learned or planned to do from today's session in the comments. And be sure to tag us at Giveffect in that comment. Winners will be selected at random and notified via email at 1 p.m. today, just 30 minutes after today's session. All right, let's go ahead and get started. I'm really excited for this conversation because I think so many nonprofits are going to recognize part of your story today, Mike. For many nonprofits, what starts as the right tools at the right time can slowly turn into this manual work, disconnected systems, internal coordination, just too many moments of trying to troubleshoot issues or trying to, figure it out yourselves when really your platform is just not working for you the way that it should. And I know that's really what started happening at Reconciliation Services as your organization grew. So I know a lot of nonprofit teams are in that place right now where they're wanting to start to ask those bigger questions about whether the system is really still supporting how they want to operate and how they want to grow. So today is a really real conversation behind making a nonprofit CRM change, those frustrations, the hesitation, the internal discussions, all that really goes into it, and what finally pushes your team to say, okay, we need a different way forward. So, Mike, welcome again. So excited. Please take a moment just to introduce yourself and Reconciliation Services.
Sure thing. My name is Mike. I am the Community Engagement and Insights Manager, which is a really fancy title to say I handle the volunteer side. I do orientations, community presentations, but I also do data and operations analytics, kind of marrying my passions and my experiences. A really unique role that I love. And all that to say, with the transition to Giveffect, it put me in a unique position to kind of understand a lot of the different facets of our work. And so Reconciliation Services is a social and mental health service agency. We started in the 80s on Kansas City's historic Red Line, if you're familiar with the history of redlining. And we do ID restoration, rent and utilities assistance, public medicine cabinet, just to name a few. We do individual and group therapy services. We operate a foster grandparent program and Thelma's Kitchen, a pay it forward cafe and catering workforce development program. So we've got a few irons in the fire before you even take in the back end of things like CRM. And so we yeah, that's part of the reason I'm here today is talking about the tool and how Giveffect has been really transformative for our team.
Amazing. Yeah, your team has so many cool programs and so many things going on. Take us back just a little bit. So, what was really happening at Reconciliation Services that first started the conversation around needing something different for a CRM platform?
Absolutely. So one thing that you had mentioned was, getting the right tool at the right time. And I mean, we are all guilty of it. I'm guilty in my personal life and in professional. It's like, oh, hey, here's the Band-Aid to a problem that we have right now. And we had a lot of really great tools and a lot of good insight. But when we started, we originally were using Salesforce as our CRM and volunteer management platform, and it was great and it served our purposes. but as we've continued to grow, we grew from a team of about three when we adopted that to a team of we're almost up to 30 now, and we're kind of hitting that medium size
Yeah.
nonprofit. And so as we've grown and as we've had staff transitions, there's been a lot of moments that we're like, well, this is kind of what we've always done, and what would it look like to do something a little different with all the irons that we've got in the fire?
Yeah, that's awesome. Was there like a specific moment where your team started to realize we can't keep doing it like this, or was it just a culmination of a
Hmm.
lot of things? I guess to tell me a little bit more about that.
Yeah, I would say it's less one moment, but it was more of conversations of now as we've grown, we have a different volunteer management platform and CRM and event platform and recurring donation platform. And then we also have a catering platform for part of our program. So we've got five different systems that we're pulling information from. And it would be, we would have a donor who would place an order through the catering system, and then they would come and volunteer. But our development team didn't realize that because the systems were not talking to each other. The syncs were not consistent enough to give us an accurate like readout of what is this person's involvement with our work. And so really, as we began to have more meetings and start conversations of like, oh, Joe came in and did this, and it's like, wait, I had no idea that wasn't in the CRM. I wish I could have had a touch point with him at that moment. And those kind of conversations, we had more meetings and planning, and at a certain point it was like, you know what, we got to figure out a better way to
Mhm.
start to do this, because it's taking a lot of our time and energy to coordinate these systems that are not talking to each other.
Yeah, I think those some of those frustrations really started to like pile up over time.
Hmm.
Once your team did realize that something had to change, how did those conversations start happening internally?
Yeah, I think that was kind of the most interesting thing, is that it was just this culmination. We're having these meetings and we're like, well, maybe there's a tool, maybe there's an integration for Salesforce, maybe there's something like this that can do it. And at a certain point, we realized like, oh, you know, there are platforms that are doing this in a way that it houses everything we need to do in one spot. And so we just kind of casually began having conversations, and we asked our friends in the nonprofit sector, like, hey, what do you guys use? What do you and began to kind of learn more about the field. And then we started doing demonstrations with different places, and we'd sit and take notes. I've got like a 40-page document of all the notes I sat there and took during all the demonstrations, trying to figure out which one would be the right fit for our work. Um, and really, it just grew pretty organically from the team.
hmm As you were looking at all of those different options, were there things that you were focusing on, whether that's things that your team knew that you had to get better or aspects of the platforms that you were really looking for? I guess walk us through that process of
Mm.
really, as you started to look at those different options, what was your thought process?
Sure. Our thought process was there's going to be no platform that can do 100% of what we want to do. But if we can find a platform that, maybe gets 80 or 90, and
Mhm.
then um, has the possibility for an integration for that last 10, like we can make that work. And so for us, we needed to find a way to get everything to talk, so that obviously we have our team meetings, we've got our huddles, we've got things like that, but we were spending so much time trying to correct information from our database that it was really taking away from the time that we could have been putting to some projects that had more forward momentum and things like that. And so for us, it was really about how do we get everything all under one roof? And that
Mhm.
was our most important piece.
Yeah, yeah. I think that, like you said, there's always going to be something that doesn't quite work for your team, but it's finding really how you can get as close as possible and having everything
Hmm.
so that it's more connected than what you're coming from before. I guess at what point did some of your conversations become less about fixing all of those individual problems and thinking more about just simplifying the everything as an organization as a whole?
Almost immediately for us,
Mhm.
because it was just such a central piece of like, it's really complicated how, we were using like Bloomerang Volunteer and trying to get that to sync with Salesforce, and the fields weren't lining up. And we're like, we just everything we're going through like it's like going through a translator services. Sometimes you're gonna have something that's lost in translation or doesn't make sense the same way. And so we wanted to find a way to make sure everything was talking to each other.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to pivot a little bit. So this is a trickier part of the conversation. Just when you
Mm.
started to think about budget and investment, how did the conversation shift beyond just what does this cost?
One thing really that we began to look at is there's so many different platforms that handle so many different pieces, and some of them are free until you get to a certain point.
Mhm.
And we kind of had that, like you were saying again, the right tool at the right time. It's like, oh, let's bring this one in and let's bring this one in. Oh, they've grown to a place that now we need to use the paid tier, and it not only were we're having to deal with the billing for all of these different places, but we were also having to look at the cost, because it went from, oh, this is free to now this is paid, and you stack that up and it does, I mean, it adds up over time, whether you're doing the monthly or the yearly subscriptions for a lot of services.
Absolutely.
And so it became more about how can we remove the tool, how can we make our system more efficient so we can focus on people, which is the core of our mission.
Mhm.
And that for me that was something a mentor drilled into me a long time ago. We need to be efficient with things so that we can focus on people, because people take time, and people relationships take time. And so that for us, how can we take the tool out of the way of making sure that we can do what's most important to our organization?
I love that. Yeah, I'm gonna have to steal that one when I'm, when I'm talking to people. I really love that. So I know that you looked at a ton of different options. What was it about Give Effect that made your team feel like, okay, this could actually work for us?
Mhm. Well, the funny thing was, and I'll just be candid about it, is
Yeah.
we had pretty much, I think we'd looked at like 12,
Wow.
and we were about to make a decision, and I think all of us were like, okay, yeah, it's gonna work. But our director of development happened to have coffee with another organization down the street, and they said, "Oh, we love Giveffect. We that's the platform that we use," and we're like, "What's one more demonstration?" And so when we found out, we went to the meeting, and uh, almost immediately we're like, oh, this actually does everything that we're looking for all in one place. Like, this is what we set out to do. Like, I mean, you guys don't have a catering integration, but I would not expect most nonprofit CRMs to have that. And but
Right.
but the team, as we've been migrating, the team has done a fantastic job finding ways to create custom fields so that we can still have that data and still have that point of reference. And so that 80-90% thing that I mentioned earlier, like,
Right.
your team has just been fantastic in helping us close that gap so that we're getting closer to that 100 mark every day.
Well, thank you so much. We're really excited to have you all on board and excited that we're able to make it work for you. I know during some of our preparation calls, you were joking that during the demo, you were like getting texts under the table, being like, poke a hole in this, like what's wrong with it,
Yes, exactly.
So I'm glad that you weren't able to poke any holes there. How long did the process realistically take
Mm,
from starting that search to onboarding? 12 demos can definitely take a bit of time, but walk
right.
us through a little bit of your timeline.
Well, we had a pretty strict timeline. It was kind of the last thing our director of development did. She was been with us since we got started, and was stepping out, and it had been planned for a long time. And she's like, but I want to set you guys up with the right tool for the team. And so we did a really intense search. I mean, it was like 2 3 demos a week, and then we were doing follow-up conversations and all of that. So we had a pretty tight timeline, but it was about over the course of 3 months or so that we had gone through that process. And then I think it was right at the end of the year, right after the start of the new year, that we had signed on with Giveffect, and had made that decision. And we just, as we're looking again, coming back to the cost and budget, I mean, it was one of the best options that we could have asked for. to fit all of our needs in one roof was compared to all the tools we were using was just crazy. Um, so for us, it was about 3 months or so.
Mhm.
I imagine for some teams that might take a little longer, especially teams that might have to, get board approval depending on the size of the organization. But we were able to move pretty quickly on that, thankfully.
Yeah, yeah, I know. We definitely see a big range on our end of how long it takes people. I would say most, though, fall in that 3 to 6 range.
Hmm.
You also, it's really great that you were able to move quickly, and I love that. Move quickly, and also for you guys just to be set up, like you said, it's already a big piece of transition, and so to be able to have the right tools also it makes
Hmm.
a big difference. Where our time is flying by, and we have just a few questions here before we start our audience Q&A. So if you haven't gotten your questions in, please use the Q&A feature and ask your questions. Um, Mike, I guess what do you think that nonprofits should pay the most attention to when evaluating a CRM partner?
Absolutely. I mean, I think it's so individualized because I would recommend Giveffect 10 out of 10 times based on the experience we've already had. Um, but at the same time, how does your organization operate? I had a conversation with a friend who's at a national literacy nonprofit, and they were looking at different CRMs, but they don't have any events because they're kind of decentralized, and
Mhm.
so they don't have any like events. And I'm like, well, that's one of the things, and they kind of have some integrations already. I'm like, it might not be a good fit, but
Yeah.
that's just specific for her organization.
Mhm.
Really, it's what are the most important things to you? Like for us, being able, as we've been growing, being able to streamline our communication has been crucial. Like I was saying, the tools not talking to each other means, we are not on the same page about who's doing what.
Mhm.
That was really our central thing is how can it streamline the communications? And because we do events and because we have such a robust volunteer program and because we have our dedicated marketing team member who go is getting a crash course and getting things set up through Give Effect. It really it is what is your so that at the end of the day, what are the most important things to your organization, and how can you find the tool that you know uh, streamlines that process for you. Don't let the CRM be an obstacle. It's a means to an end to further the work of your mission. And so, sit down with the team. We had conversations of what are your top five. Um, those are and then kind of go from there. And what are your non-negotiables? What are the things that's like, okay, we can kind of work with that. And of course, there's the budget piece. So, but work with your team, talk with them, and go in kind of knowing what those things are as you're starting that process.
Yeah, I think that's such great advice and really being able to outline, like you said, what are your top five? What are your non-negotiables and what things can you kind of work with? And that really is helpful. And not only just for you to do that, but for your entire team to participate in that exercise
Hmm.
and really be able to work together to determine that. So I think that's great advice. We're going to move right into our audience submitted questions. So, jumping off here, I think, you mentioned that you had lots of data,
Hmm.
15 years of messy data. I think a lot of nonprofits hear that and they feel immediately overwhelmed. Maybe they can
Hmm.
relate to that. I guess tell us a little bit about what your data migration process has felt like so far.
So the migration process, and I'll be candid, and it was supposed to be a team of three of us that were overseeing the migration, and two of that team left for personal reasons, and it kind of all got put on me, and I was happy to do it, and I love that kind of stuff, spreadsheets and all of that, and so um, but it was pretty overwhelming from my point of view as I'm getting started. I'm
For
looking at
sure.
all of this data and I'm like, how is this going to translate? But when you onboard with GiveEffect, you get a dedicated migration specialist. And guy I've been working with is named Corey. He has been absolutely phenomenal.
Mhm.
and helps. Gosh, it's like a 70-page like migration manual. Everything is was done step by step so that what we're submitting is as clean as it could possibly be. And the team has been super communicative. I have had migrations where that's not been the case, where it's like, hey, you upload a spreadsheet and kind of hope for the best. But the Giveffect team has been incredibly hands-on. And like, hey, I'm not a paid spokesperson. I am speaking truly as someone who works in this every day. It has been amazing to have the team dedicated to seeing this complete. And like I said, we're coming from 5 different platforms and trying to get all that messy data to talk to each other. It takes time, but it has been a really well done process thanks to Giveffect team.
Thank you so much for saying that. I know that our data migration team has certainly put in so much effort to try to make that process as smooth as possible, and really is there every step of the way. I have a question here. Did you use any professional help, consultants, development firms, anything like that to help in your decision making or your evaluation process?
We did not. We chose to do that internally, and so
Okay.
a lot of it was more organic and having conversations with, oh, who do you use? And of course, there's the bigger names like Razor's Edge and Salesforce and things like that that we were already using, and so you kind of that's how we went about the process, and just we wanted that personal connection, and like hearing someone say we love this platform meant a lot.
Yeah, yeah. Another couple here. This team feels like they've outgrown their current systems,
Mhm.
but I think the idea of change feels really overwhelming. What would you say to nonprofits in that position who they might know they need to change, but feel overwhelmed by it?
Mhm. I think again for us it was more we had outgrown our current systems and it was a point of this is not sustainable for the health of our team anymore. This is something that's impeding our team, and so the idea of change can be overwhelming. Change is hard even when change is good. um, but for us it was the only thing worse than trying to make such a massive change was not making that change and continuing to just, I mean, it felt like we were pounding sand sometimes trying to have conversations of how do we get all of our ducks in a row. And so um, uh, if you're in that position, I would be very intent on asking questions of what is your migration process? How do we go from systems A, B, and C over to your system, whether that's Giveffect or someone else that you're looking at, like, and try to get more specifics on like what can we expect, who is our point of contact, make sure that you know who you're going to be talking to and what you can expect. Again, Giveffect has been super communicative, and I've had experiences where that's not been the case previously. So
I think that starts to answer our kind of our next question here. Were there any comparable tools that you evaluated,
mm,
and do you mind sharing any of their shortcomings, whether that be on the communication side or the
mhm.
actual features, if you can remember any?
Yeah, there's a handful. I think, we've been using Salesforce, but Salesforce was almost like too complex for our size.
Mhm.
And we just had so much messy data and so many like integrations layered on. So we looked at Bloomerang. We used Bloomerang's volunteer software, but they also have the CRM and fundraising software as well. And so we thought about going over there. And really, that was more, we'd had some issues on our end with response time for when we were having any issues. And so, we're like, the tool looks good, but based on our experience with the volunteer, I think we're going to hold off for now. And so, gosh, um, Razor's Edge, we looked at Razor's Edge, and that was it was a great tool, but it was still a lot of layered integrations. Like, oh, if you want to do volunteering, you've got to bring this in, and if you want to do this, you got to do this in. With Giveffect, you need some like API keys for things like Spark Post to do your mailings, things like that. But it's very much all in the domain of Giveffect. You're not like going out to this site or sending someone a link to a different volunteer site to be able to manage all of that. So the integrations are important, but it's all housed in Giveffect, which makes a
Mhm.
huge difference.
Yeah, it sounds like your team really was looking for that connected system and trying to eliminate silos as much as possible.
Mhm.
Are there any customizations that you think teams should look for in a CRM or that you all looked for?
Mm. Yeah, I would say as far as customizations, I think again that kind of comes back to your organization. Like I was saying, my colleague, talk about been up here.
Our guest speaker or other guest speaker?
Yeah. This is Giovanni. It really is tailored to your organization. Like I
Mhm,
mentioned, we have a catering platform. We use an online catering website that people can order from with our workforce development program. And so being able to see, oh, we had this organization or this donor or this company order from us, that's important information for our team to have. So when they reach out, we've got a foot in the door if they've ordered food from Thelma's. And so for us, that was a very unique customization. And so it was definitely part of our conversation.
mhm.
But if your organization doesn't have events, then that's not a customization that you necessarily need. Um, and so I think it would be more individual basis. Like, what are the things that are really important to you? For us, we wanted the marketing platform to be integrated into our CRM. That way, when we pull a list of volunteers, we want this email to go to all volunteers. It's all from the same place. We're pulling information from the same pot rather than, okay, we're going to pull from over here, but then there's also these, legacy contacts from this other platform and things like that.
Right. Even earlier, I think you mentioned that streamlining communication so that
Mhm.
you're able to pull a record and say, oh, this person has already been reached out to, or, this person sent an email or had a meeting with this donor so that you really have everything in the same place so that across your team, you're able to see what's already been done. Yeah, I think that's great. A last question here before we wrap up today. We talked a little bit about data migration already, but
Mhm.
has there been anything that's surprised you the most about the migration process so far?
Ooh. As far as surprise, I think one of the things that has caught me off guard, um, I've done in different capacities like data and operations pieces for a long time.
Mhm.
And I have been absolutely blown away. I've said it already, but I've been absolutely blown away. For example, we had a field that we've been migrating from Salesforce that did not translate to Giveffect, and
Mhm.
the team has created a patch, like developed a patch to make it work rather than say, well, you can do it yourself, you can do this. And that has truly never been my experience. I've probably done 4 or 5 platform migrations like this, and Giveffect has just been so on top of it. And just you get to schedule calls with your migration specialist to say, "Hey, this data is whack. How do we get this under control?" And them walking you through it has been incredibly meaningful. It's been a breath of fresh air in the data migration world. If you're listening to this call and you are going to end up being the point person for your organization, make sure you're asking those questions as you're interviewing CRMs and getting demos. But as someone who is in the midst of that process, Giveffect has been incredibly on top of it and making sure we have what we need to be able to succeed. We were able to do things including like migrating our recurring donations. We were using the formerly classy, now GoFundMe Pro, for our recurring payments and all of that. And we are in the midst of transferring those payments. So you don't have to track down donors and be like, hey, we need that credit card information again. And that's just an awkward conversation to have. It just all happens on the back end. So just the whole process from start to finish, working with our account manager, working with our migration specialist has just been absolutely amazing.
Well, thank you so much, Mike, and thank you so much for being here today, sharing your experience with so many other people who are in similar situations. We're so grateful for you and excited to see all the things that we continue to grow together. Reconciliation services and Giveffect. So thank you so much, and thank you everyone for joining today. If you all wouldn't mind, as this meeting ends, there's going to be a quick survey. So go ahead and take a moment to complete that.